It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Shorman, and this is the Forum on Eagle Community Television. We record this program every Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock out at our Dillon's location on Vine Street. If you're coming by, be sure and drop by and say hi to us. We do that. We have a special guest today, President and CEO of Sunflower Electric here in Hayes, actually based in Hayes. His name is Stuart Lowry. And Stuart, good to have you on our program.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now I say it's Hayes, I drive by the Sunflower Electric building over on 13th Street, but where actually does Sunflower serve?
Sunflower serves 55 counties in central and western Kansas. We have other office locations in Garden City, Great Bend, Dodge City, power plants and the like, and transmission facilities in other cities in western Kansas.
And one of the things I noticed when I was looking through some of the stats and figures on what Sunflower Electric does, you cover a lot of different areas with electricity and gas from a lot of different places.
We do. We're actually in the wholesale electric business. We provide generation and high voltage transmission services to our 6 member owners. We're not in the gas business, but we do burn a lot of natural gas in our power plants.
Well, you also get electricity from wind and hydro. I noticed hydro because I didn't know that part of it.
We do on a capacity basis, meaning the nameplate ability of our power plants. We're about 40% coal, a little over 40% natural gas, and the rest wind or other.
Or the other category,
Yeah,
probably
other.
an interesting one. We'll talk about that in a minute. But when we talk about wholesale electric, for the consumer out there, what does that actually mean? If they go into their home here in Hayes and plug in, they're probably getting their electricity from Midwest Energy.
That's correct. We do not sell power to end-use consumers. We sell power to electric cooperatives that serve end-use consumers. So for example, if you're a member of Western Cooperative Electric in Waukene, they're a member of Sunflowers, and they buy their wholesale power from Sunflower and then provide distribution retail services to the end-use customer.
Now, you talk about the 55 counties in Kansas that you sell power to companies in that serve those areas. How far outside of the state do you go? Do you sell power outside of Kansas as well?
We really don't sell power outside of the state. There may be a few odd services here and there right on the state line that perhaps cross over into other states, but we're a Kansas company.
One of the things that I know when I was looking at the information is that you have a lot of areas that we'll talk about, but the one that seems to hit the news right now and seems to be, and I don't know if you feel like you've been on Face the Nation all the last few weeks,
Yeah.
but coal fire plants and the emission standards seem to be a changing number.
Right.
Sunflower has been fighting that for several years now, trying to
Right.
get a second plant. Where are you in that process since the Supreme Court had ruled?
Well, as you mentioned, the Kansas Supreme Court did issue a ruling recently. It was an appeal of the permit that the Kansas Department of Health and Environment issued to us for the construction of a second power plant at Holcomb Station. And essentially what the Supreme Court did is that they reversed one portion of the permit that dealt with 1 hour emissions limitations, one small part of the permit. They then remanded the permit back to the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. So KDHE will now be in the position of revisiting that portion of the permit and setting the standards appropriate to what the court ordered. What really happened was that in between the time Sunflower made application for the permit and the time that KDHE granted the permit, EPA changed the underlying emission standards. So when KDHE issued the permit, they applied the standards that were in place when the application was filed, and the Supreme Court ruled that they needed to use the updated standards.
Well, one of the things you talk about standard for this is not a simple process, is it?
No, it is not. There is literally years of work that goes into designing, planning, and building a power plant. These are literally 50-year investments. And so it's enormously complex, and as you can imagine, before we can design a power plant, we have to know the underlying regulations that will guide that design. Until we know those regulations, the design cannot be completed. Until the design can be completed, of course, we can't start building a power plant. So
When
very
you're-
complex process.
And you get the cart ahead of the horse or vice versa to some extent, but you already have one power plant in place.
We do. We have a coal-fired power plant at Holcomb Station that's been in commercial operation since the mid-1980s.
If
A
you haven't
very,
driven
very
by
good
that,
performing unit.
It's a big facility. You
It is.
just drive by and you go, wow, that's a big facility.
It's a 365 megawatt facility, which is large for this part of the state. The planned second unit, if it were able to be constructed, would be 895 megawatts, so significantly larger again than the one that exists right now.
Let's talk about emission standards just in general, because I know one thing, everybody wants to have cleaner air, but I understand that the plant that's out there currently in place is actually a pretty clean plant, and the new one you are designing is actually a very, very, if not top of the line type of from emission
Yeah.
standard.
Well, the interesting thing is that Holcomb 1, when it went to commercial operation in the 1980s, was really the last of the coal plants built in Kansas. And the way the regulations have always been written under the Clean Air Act, you always use the best available technology when you're controlling emissions. So Holcomb 1 had state-of-the-art emission controls. Likewise, Holcomb 2 will be state-of-the-art. That's the way the Clean Air Act is meant to operate. So you're always using the best available control technologies anytime you build a new plant.
How do these plants compare to others in the country?
Well, the coal fleet in Kansas is in the process right now of undergoing significant upgrades due to new EPA regulations. Our unit at Holcomb Station had most of the pollution controls that are required now under the EPA regulations. Some of the older coal plants in eastern Kansas are currently undergoing retrofits to install new pollution control.
One of the things that when you drive by and you look, you see a lot of steam coming out of those plants. What is that? Is that smoke? Is that soot?
Well, literally what you are seeing is steam. The atmospheric conditions have to be exactly right for you to see a plume coming from the power plant, either the cooling tower or the stack. But essentially what you're seeing is condensation.
Like a cloud.
Like a cloud. Within that condensation, there are some particulates that are included, all of those regulated and all of those controlled.
What is the next step for Sunflower right now? Because you've been through a lot of different steps as far as building this second plant. Where do you go next?
With respect to Holcomb 2, we are now back before the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. KDHE will make the changes to the permit that the Supreme Court ordered. We hope that the permit will then be reissued, and we'll be back to the point of actually getting to where we can make an economic decision about whether or not Holcomb 2 is in the best interest of those that we serve. We are partners in this project, as you probably know, with Tri-State G&T, which is an entity very similar to Sunflower but located in Colorado. They too serve electric cooperatives. They too will be making a decision about whether or not a new coal unit is in the best interest of their members. Everything that we do on the generation side is driven in large part by economics. How can we provide the most affordable electric service to those that we serve? And that's why we've pursued Holcomb 2. That's why we'll continue to evaluate it.
One of the things I know early on, the reason for even going this direction, not only to have the electricity, but able to provide a solid economic footing for Western Kansas, because this not only brings jobs, but it brings business, it brings a lower price electricity, which makes companies more competitive in Kansas. Without building the second plant, that has to have an effect on the economy going forward in Kansas.
Well, there are economic consequences to every decision that we make. And to give you an example, when Holcomb 1 was built, it wasn't the first choice that Sunflower wanted to make. Sunflower wanted to build gas at that point in time, but again, federal regulations at that time prevented the use of natural gas as a boiler fuel. That was the Industrial Fuels Use Act days in the 1970s, before our time. That led to the construction of Holcomb 1. And so now, as we look back over time, what we find is that today, the most affordable generation resources that we have are coal. And that's true all over the state. It's true all over the Southwest Power Pool footprint in which we operate on an economic basis. Coal is the most affordable. And the thing that we hear more than anything else from members is that they want low cost, affordable, reliable power. And that's one of the benefits that Holcomb 2 would bring.
When you see that, not only generation for pumps, for irrigation and things like that, it just changes the economic structure. What does it mean in dollar value? I assume that you compute this as to what this means for Kansas from an economic standpoint.
Well, again, we're looking long term as it relates to this project. We believe that there's about $110 million of net present value economic benefit to western Kansas if the plant gets built. That's before a single kilowatt hour is generated from the plant. And so just in economic activity alone, there is a huge benefit to the region. Of course, after the plant gets built, the benefits are measured more long term. This, as I mentioned, is a 50-year investment. New generation resources of any type, when they come online, typically are not the lowest cost. It's lowest cost over a long period of time. And so we as a company believe that we need to look out for the long-term best interests of central and western Kansas and of those that we serve. So that's one of the things that makes coal so attractive to us.
Well, you also have the original plant there, which means part of the infrastructure is already in place to make that work.
Right, and that's actually some of the appeal for Tri-State and really other utilities that have looked at Holcomb Station as a potential site. We do have the infrastructure there. We have a very talented workforce in place. We have the capability to operate a second unit. So we would definitely be leveraging the investment that western Kansas has made in that facility already.
Stuart Lowry is our guest here on the Forum on Eagle Community Television. We're going to come back and find out a little bit more about his history, where he's been before he moved to Hays, find out a little bit more about Sunflower Electric. Back with more after this.
Youthful body, tight tummy, smooth facial lines. Greystone Cosmetic and Reconstructive Surgery is here to help you achieve your goals and give yourself the new look you've always wanted. Greystone offers sophisticated surgical and non-surgical cosmetic procedures. With services now available locally, there's no need to wait any longer. Contact Greystone Cosmetic and Reconstructive Surgery at Hays Medical Center today or online at greystonecosmetic.haysmed.com.
It's a beautiful day in our super high-speed internet great customer service neighborhood. Like you, this is where we live. In fact, our company is employee-owned, so it's our goal to improve the quality of life for everyone in our community by delivering faster, more reliable internet, clearer, more feature-laden phone service, and tons of high-definition TV channels, all with a level of customer service and value you'd expect from people who are your neighbors. Eagle Communications, our community connected.
Welcome back to the second half of our forum here on Eagle Community Television. The forum is brought to you by all the great folks out at Hays Med. If you have any questions or comments about today's show, I'd like to hear from you. My name is Gary Shorman. You'll find me at gary.shorman@eaglecom.net, same place. Or go on Facebook under ECTV Forum. Just type that in the search bar. You'll find out about our program, see pictures of not only our past guests, but guests we have coming up in the future. That's, again, under ECTV Forum on Facebook. Our guest today is Stuart Lowry, and he's the president and CEO of Sunflower Electric. Sunflower is based in Hays, but serves 55 counties in western and southwest Kansas. We went to the break, Stuart. I mentioned that we'd find out a little bit about your history. What brought you to Sunflower Electric?
Well, I was very attracted to the company by my prior work with Sunflower. I ran a statewide trade association in Topeka, represented a lot of the Sunflower members as an attorney early in my career, so knew a lot about the company prior to my arrival, and I truly believe that the company was making the lives of those they serve much better through their efforts, and that personal meaning, that purpose meant a lot to me and played a large part in my seeking and obtaining the job here at Sunflower.
And for those that want to go back a long ways, where did you grow up?
I grew up in northeast Kansas in a town called Valley Falls, a small town of about 1,200 people in Jefferson County.
And you probably been through Clay Center a couple of times.
I have been a few times, yes.
Well, we were almost neighbors from up there. So anyway, it's good to have you as part of this. And when you jumped into this job, Did you expect it to turn out the way it did with all, because your legal background obviously has come into play?
Well, it's interesting. I replaced Earl Watkins, or I succeeded Earl Watkins in this position. Nobody replaces Earl. I succeeded Earl in this position as we did a short transition period where both of us were there at the same time. He had a list of things that he thought were going to be key issues that we would be facing in the near term, and it's surprising to me how many things have been added to that list since Earl left, and how many of those things that we thought would be a major concern have really been replaced by other concerns. So it's just a constantly evolving and changing business.
Well, like a lot of business, regulations have a lot to do with that as those regulations change, whether it be in broadcast cable like we're in, or whether you're in, those change, and that requires everybody to kind of direct their course to get through.
It sure does. The regulatory environment that the industry, the electric industry, not just Sunflower, faces right now is probably unprecedented. And maybe like your business, if you look at any of the individual regulations in isolation, they make sense, they seem reasonable, but when you start stacking all of the regulations one on top of the other, you find that it's a pretty daunting challenge to meet the expectations and to do so in a way that keeps service affordable.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the other areas you're in. We mentioned the wind energy, and we see these wind generators going up all along I-70.
Right.
Is Sunflower hooked in with any of those?
We are. We have over 200 megawatts of wind capacity that we have available to serve our members. The structure that we've used, the wind industry, as you may know, is driven in large part by federal production tax credits. And so taxable entities, larger companies, a lot of them will build wind projects, such as the Smoky Hill project that you see on I-70. And since we're a not-for-profit electric cooperative, we really don't benefit from production tax credits. So we enter into contracts with companies that can benefit to buy the output or the wind production from those wind farms. And we actually have a contract for the Smoky Hills project that is one of the most visible projects along I-70 near Ellsworth.
One of the other areas we mentioned was just hydro, and where would in Kansas you find hydro energy to work with?
Doesn't seem likely, does it?
It doesn't.
What limited amount of hydro power that we have available to us comes from the Western Area Power Administration, which is based in Loveland, Colorado. Very small amount of hydropower. Now the utilities in eastern Kansas have access to the White River projects that you see, maybe have boated on or taken vacations at. A lot more hydropower in eastern Kansas than in western Kansas. No big surprise there.
One of the other areas that I know you're working on is a new project called the Rubart plant. And what is that? What is that all about?
Well, Rubart Station is a nominal 120 megawatt facility that's being built about 13 miles east of Ulysses, Kansas, right on the Grant-Haskell County line. Rubart is named after one of our directors, Perry Rubart, a man from Ulysses, Kansas. As I said, it's a 120 megawatt facility. It's Caterpillar reciprocating engines, which is different than any other resource that we have in our system right now. Those engines will be fueled by natural gas.
One of the things that in looking at how this works, you have your basis of the coal-fired plant, and then you add wind, you add the new gas-powered generation to that. How long will that last in the whole scope of being able to provide Kansans with affordable electricity?
Well, anytime we build a facility, we hope that we can get 50 or 60 years of service from that facility, just because there's such an enormous capital cost to build generation facilities. In truth, you never really know, but we try to take very good care of those assets that we rely on to serve our members, and we hope that by taking good care of them, that they will last for years to come. In truth, the assets that we operate today, the average age is probably between 35 and 40 years. So they are getting some age on them. But again, we hope that by taking good care of our things that they'll last for the long haul.
Now, at some point, Kansas will be using more electricity than you can produce. If you were to start building that Holcomb 2 plant today, When would it actually be ready? Because that's a mammoth project by any standard.
It is a mammoth project. I think it would be very ambitious to think that we could do this, but realistically we could probably have the unit in commercial operation by sometime in 2019, which is a time at which we would need additional generation resources. But you're right, it takes a long time to plan, design, and construct a facility of that size.
What other new products and projects do you have in place?
Well, right now, there is a great deal of activity and construction on the transmission side of the business. We've been talking about generation. We also operate high voltage transmission facilities that actually deliver power from the power plants to the substations that actually then serve the end use consumers that watch your program. What we're seeing on the transmission side is interesting because western Kansas is very wind rich. There's a lot of demand to build wind generation in western
Anybody
Kansas.
that's watching this has been through last week where it was wind rich.
Yeah, very much so. But a lot of demand for wind generation in western Kansas, and that requires the transmission facilities to move that power out of western Kansas. A lot of the wind facilities that you see being built and operating today are actually under contract with utilities in eastern Kansas, Missouri, some as far away as Arkansas and Alabama. That power has to have a path to get out of western Kansas, and that's going to require the construction of more transmission facilities. You're seeing that already. Transmission today is very different from what people probably remember years ago, where we would build transmission facilities just to serve our load. Today, Sunflower, Midwest Energy, the other cooperatives in western Kansas are all part of the Southwest Power Pool, which is a regional transmission organization based in Little Rock, Arkansas, 7 states. But as a RTO, a regional transmission organization, they dictate what transmission projects get built and where they get built. And the projects that are identified for construction are identified through a very complex, very time-consuming study process to determine where the resources are going to be located and where the power needs to move.
You know, there was new power out west of Hayes, between Hayes and Ellis, Waukene,
Yes.
that area, power that was transmission line.
Right.
Just the process of getting the landowners and getting that to be able to put in place, again, it's no small feat.
That was a large transmission project that actually interconnects with our Spearville station. It's owned by ITC Great Plains, which is a partner of ours in the transmission business. But you're seeing lots of lines like that and smaller than that being built all over the state of Kansas and really all over the region.
Well, the one thing that's important, economically, Kansas, if they're to grow, is going to have good resources. One of those is electricity to be able to grow and provide the resources for Kansas.
We truly believe that we are a significant input cost into any business. And mission one for me every day is to remember that those we serve are going to depend upon us for reliable service and affordable service. We're doing the best that we can to meet that mission.
Somebody out there, a lot of times you get the press clippings, you see either a newspaper article or something on TV that says, boy, here's the emission standards, you know, all this. Where does someone go that really wants to dive into that? I know you have a website, you also have a Facebook page you can go to that really has some other resources for people to find out.
Right. Well, if you want to learn more about Sunflower or our sister company, Mid-Kansas, that our members also own, you can go to our website, sunflower.net. We also have a Facebook page. I think it's Sunflower Electric Power. And both of those resources should give anybody looking for more information everything that they need.
Well, if you go on Facebook, I know you can type that in under the search bar, a little bit like the ECTV forum. It'll come up with all those Sunflower things, and you can link up and hit the like button on that, the little thumbs up thing, and be in good shape from that standpoint.
That'd be great. We'd appreciate it.
Stuart, thanks for being on the program today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Stuart Lowry has been our guest here on the forum. Stuart is the president CEO of Sunflower Electric. Corporate office is based here in Hayes. Our program is brought to you by Hayes Med and by Eagle Communications. Our community connected.
youthful body, tight tummy, smooth facial lines. Greystone Cosmetic and Reconstructive Surgery is here to help you achieve your goals and give yourself the new look you've always wanted. Greystone offers sophisticated surgical and non-surgical cosmetic procedures. With services now available locally, there's no need to wait any longer. Contact Greystone Cosmetic and Reconstructive Surgery at Hayes Medical Center today or online at greystonecosmetic.hayesmed.com.